and the exciting part of the evening, Dr. Chris Kavelin. Dr. Chris Kavelin will be discussing the art of mentoring. Just a bit about Dr. Kavelin's background. Dr. Chris Kavelin has a PhD in law on the protection of Indigenous medical knowledge and a master's on the environmental crisis. He has been invited by governments to assist with educational policy and school development. He's currently a director of the company First Light Medicines, which helps Indigenous communities around the world build sustainable health and medical systems. He is also an honorary associate in law and an honorary research fellow in the Center of Social Inclusion at Macquarie University. His family founded the Virtues Project, which the United Nations honored as a model program for families of all cultures. Chris is the director of the International Virtues Project Research Network, and that's a worldwide effort to instill virtues in day-to-day either workplace and families. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, everyone. First, I wanted to thank Tony for, ever since I met him, his idealism just kind of exudes, doesn't it? Enthusiasm and idealism, and it kind of lifts you up to say, oh, I can do more than I thought I could, and standing here is kind of like that for me right now. Pmi also I wanted to thank because her professionalism and her encouragement leading up into this event made me feel quite comfortable, about coming up. And so it's really a privilege to be here. So the art of mentoring is what I've been asked to speak on. And go to the first one. So what I wanted to offer you in the 15 minutes that I'm here is one thing I'd love to give you is simplicity. Right? So I don't want to just throw a whole lot, pack everything I can in 15 minutes. I want to give you a couple of tools for creating a culture of transformation in your company and the world as a mentor. Now, when I wrote that, I wasn't really thinking about the mentees, so I'd like to rewrite that and kind of, include for us to think about what is the role of the mentees as well, because in my own mind, I noticed a kind of a prejudice that might be commonly shared by some, that the mentor is the active agent in the relationship, right? And I know that's not the case, because I was listening to people beforehand in the dinner part, and I was really encouraged, and just in the brief conversations was learning from one of the mentees about his experience of being mentored by somebody in a completely different organizational setting. And it's really exciting to see his sense of being supported in a new role over the past year and how that has really helped him progress in his understanding of how to manage and take on more responsibility than he had expected at the beginning of the year. So the sense of being able to appreciate each other seems to be well established within your own culture. So I don't really need to address that because I've already been taught that when I first arrived. Okay, next one, please. Okay, know yourself. What are your strength virtues and what are your growth virtues? So if you were going to take away anything from what I was going to share tonight, that one in particular might sound really simple, but it's probably the most transformational thing that can occur in any relationship, whether it's between a parent and a child, between an educator and a student, between a mentor and mentee, between two equals, between any two human beings. To be able to first know yourself and to know what your particular strengths are. So when I say strength virtues, what I'm speaking of are particular qualities of the character that we're all familiar with when we hear them: courage, compassion, trustworthiness, integrity, patience, accountability. These are the virtues that make us human regardless of our culture or our faith or where we come from in the world. And so regardless of the cultural diversity, the mixed virtues language is the most effective and powerful for being able to name the strengths and gifts of character in ourselves and in the people that we're working with. So the first step, though, is that you need to know your own strengths and kind of do an audit for yourself and become familiar with what your own strengths are, and what are the areas that you kind of need to have some humility about. I need some work in this area, right? Because if you can stand strong in your own sense of, these are my strengths, then you're secure enough to be able to start to honor the gifts of other people, right? And that's easy when we're in love or somebody we really like, but if in a work relationship, if it's somebody that we're having a challenging time with, right, we're often not as secure in being able to honor what their strengths are. But that's even more so if we're not secure in what our own strengths are. So being able as a first step to understand what your unique strengths are and what your growth virtues is important. To apply this to a simple and powerful equation. Thank you. When you match your strength, virtues, or joy with needs in the world, you discover your purpose. So, as you become familiar with your own strengths, and you find needs in your organization or in the world in general, that those strengths match, and you start to serve others with your strength, with your virtue, you start to have a sense of joyfulness and your own purpose arise. It's a very simple formula, and there are strategies to enable one to develop that sense of connection between your strengths and the community, and that's probably the crux of the mentoring relationship, is being able to create an environment for the mentee to explore for themselves what their gifts are and match that within the organizations that they're in. So you're already practicing that. This isn't something new for you. But sometimes naming the essence of what is powerful about what you're already doing can be quite helpful to kind of recenter us. So, third, learn how to see and name the strength virtues in others. So we've done it for ourselves. Help those you mentor to match their strengths, joy, with needs in the organization and the world. So that's pretty much what I've just said. But one of the things that I would imagine is happening, based on the conversations that I had before, but I would strongly encourage, it's been part of my own learning journey, is people might come in with a certain education or professional background into their role, okay? And that's often valued. But their own cultural background, which they may or may not be familiar with themselves, as well as their own personal experience, are both equally valuable. Experience outside of the professional environment, right? Because the thing is that the joys and the suffering that we've experienced in our life personally, that actually is a great strength that we bring into any kind of work situation, because it gives us those experiences where we've had setbacks that have caused us, some kind of suffering in our life. It's actually good to be able to have the courage to kind of share and companion each other in those and invite people to share on that level, because in that level, you're able to be aware on levels of justice, levels of needs in those areas that other people have more than others, because you've experienced, right, similar levels of discomfort or challenges that they would have, right? So those are valuable places. And each culture has unique virtues. So some cultures have a really strong focus on hospitality, for instance, and respect. Other cultures will have a strong focus on independent critical thinking. Another culture will have a really strong emphasis on community building, and the importance of the team is the one that actually does the work. So being able as mentors and mentees to cherish the cultural gifts that each person brings in and encourage them to connect to their cultural heritage as part of the process can be another really valuable gift that you can offer. Just creating the space for them to have the courage to explore that for themselves and talk about it as they go along in their journey. And one of the reasons for this is, Einstein, he said that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it, okay? And so, both as new mentees in a unique environment, right, they haven't yet been conditioned into a certain way of thinking yet, which is actually quite valuable, because, as you know, they can bring in unique understandings and insights and solutions, but also culturally. a lot of the challenges that we're facing as business organizations are uniformly created because of some shared cultural values that we have within Australia or the United States or the UK, where a lot of business policies are formed. And so those same challenges to businesses, it's very difficult to solve them within the same cultural mindset. So being able to honor the unique cultures of the people that come into the organization is actually a way of really drawing on the collective creativity of the organization and the individual initiative. And virtues language is one of those bridges between cultures that enables those kinds of conversations, even if you're not familiar with the other person's culture. We all understand what it means when we felt that someone has shown us respect, and to acknowledge that I really want to honor the way that you've shown me respect, or your patience, or your courage. These are language bridges that enable you to have those connections. So speaking of accountability, true accountability, develop the skill of recognizing teachable moments in every challenge. So the language of the virtues is really valuable in a business context and as a mentor teaching mentees. I'll give you an example. So I was doing some training with a senior project manager for a multinational oil company. And he was relating to me how there was a challenge in their organization where they had, the CEO had come through and said, we want to say yes to our clients, and we want to let them know that we can do this, right? So he was trying to create a yes we can culture so that they could grow their business share. And that message permeated the culture of the company so strongly that the project managing teams ended up starting to extend themselves beyond what they could actually deliver. And there probably many people familiar with that kind of scenario. And so they ended up having a blowout of a project, and there was like about $1 million that just kind of disappeared because a client wasn't happy with not having what he was promised delivered, because the promise was actually not something that was capable to be delivered, right? And so when it came down to settling it, the CEO wanted to headhunt and find somebody to blame it on, right? But the issue is that there's a cultural shift that happens where you have an organization that says, let's focus on the virtue of service, right? And enthusiasm, in the way that we interact with our clients. And instead of realizing that there's actually balancing virtues there, right, of truthfulness and honesty, right, and accountability, right, what happens is that the senior part of the organization shifts the other way and creates an imbalance in the opposite direction, because there's not a sensitivity to the balance, right, of these virtues. And so it means that accountability can't occur, because there's not an understanding of how these virtues are balanced in project management. Okay? And so I just wanted to offer you that brief example to understand that if you can familiarize yourself, and there's afterwards, I'm quite happy to give you some resources, links to even just a list of 100 virtues that you can familiarize yourself with as a resource for being able to do some of these activities.